Alanna the First Adventure by Tamora Pierce is a 1983 young adult fantasy novel in the four-book Song of the Lioness series, the start of the larger Tortall universe. The story follows Alanna of Trebond, a young noblewoman who disguises herself as a boy in order to train to become a knight, a warrior scholar, in the patriarchal fantasy world that she inhabits. In the process, she makes friends, some enemies, and emerges as a strong hero figure. It's like a cross between Arya Stark's storyline in Game of Thrones and Mulan, and might have more in common to the Chinese legend of Mulan than the Disney movie, for its emphasis on the importance of honor and fealty in the pseudo-European fantasy setting. The book begins with a very straightforward introduction of twins Alanna and Tom of Trebond, two noble kids who are Mary Sues. They have special protagonist markings. They have red hair, purple eyes, which are weird even in this world, and both of them are born with a gift, innate magical ability, that manifests with a purple aura, which is also weird in this world. These traits would get them labeled as Mary Sues if they were original characters in fanfic, and they would still likely be criticized as such if the book was published today, especially Alanna, given the female association with the Mary Sue concept, and the fact that Tom is barely in it. That makes it more apparent to me that the Mary Sue concept, as it has become, is inappropriate to actual literary criticism. The point of the Mary Sue that makes sense is a self-insert character in fanfic that messes up the dynamic of the original universe, by being powerful enough to create an imbalance. Essentially creating a new protagonist that takes over, making it less of a general appeal fanfic about characters that everyone likes than a personal fantasy of the author. The concept of the Mary Sue has been removed from context to criticize female characters that have special protagonist markings, even though this is a classic fantasy trope that can have general appeal. The twins hate their birthrights. Alanna is a tomboy who hates being girly and wants to be physical, and Tom is a nerd who hates physical tasks and wants to study and develop his magical ability. When their cold, distant father announces that they must each go to separate schools to be trained as things they hate, Alanna as a priestess healer, Tom as a knight, Alanna comes up with the idea of switching places and forging new letters to have Tom be trained as a priest sorcerer and herself as a boy named Alan to be trained as a knight. Their father is so antisocial that no one at the schools would know enough about his kids to recognize that he didn't always have two boys. They go to consult with the village healer, Maud, who decides that this is important enough to do a fortune-telling divination, a form of pyromancy, where she gazes into flames and tries to make a connection to the Great Mother Goddess.
You are a goddess.
Tortall theology involves a pantheon led by male sun god Mithros and the Great Mother Goddess, each assisting humans of their respective genders. Even though Maud has trained her gift for healing and Alanna hates using magic, Maud sees nothing. But Alanna naturally sees something in the flames. A city made from polished black stone, a mountain shaped like an arrowhead, and the armies of the dead marching past. No, wait, she just sees a black city. Black City is featured on the cover of most editions, but only a few actually show it in black. Most show it as light gray. Not sure on the reasoning there. Maud determines that Alanna's idea is a good one. She knows that the twins would fare better if they trained according to their skills and not gender roles. Before letting them go, she emotionally tells Alanna to develop her gift and use it for healing. She addresses the romanticism of the figure of the knight and says that the glory of being a warrior is overrated, that actually killing people is a bad thing, even though it might be for a good cause, and that Alanna needs to give back by using her gift to save lives. Maud isn't the only one to criticize warrior romanticism, and that distinguishes the series from many of its uncritical peers, even as it plays up the adventure aspect. Alanna's plan is put into motion. She bids her brother farewell and leaves with Coram, an alcoholic former knight, who figures out that Alanna isn't Tom, but is persuaded to go along with the plan when Alanna demonstrates bravery, strength, and quick wit to calm down Coram's horse after a snake scares it, narrowly saving Coram from injury. Tom certainly wouldn't have been able to do that. Coram takes her to the royal city of Chorus, where he warns her to watch for thieves, suspiciously eyeing a particular young man with that statement. Chorus is a huge city, a conglomeration of cultures and trade, and it's busy and interesting. Alanna is dazzled by all the goods for sale, and among them, slaves. Yeah. It's not brought up much, but when we're first introduced to it, Tortall is a slave-trading nation. I think this is early installment weirdness, as slavery becomes a major theme later on, as an evil perpetuated by other countries. It's possible that someone complained to the author about it and she retconned it. She is pretty good about listening to criticism and course correcting. They go to the palace, where Alanna joins the school to become a knight. It's a lot like college, if they taught skills with the sword and horseback riding. There is great emphasis on learning in classrooms and doing homework. In a way, the story is like Harry Potter for taking the standard narrative of a child going to school and exaggerating it into a wacky fantasy school. In addition to it being fantasy college, it's about teaching the values of Tortall society, where subjects show fealty to the ruling class. As a newbie page, Alanna serves as a gopher for upperclassmen and teachers, as a means to teach polite obedience to authorities. All of the classes teach individual lessons, but the overarching point to the whole thing is to teach discipline. It's almost too much for her, but Coram convinces her to stay, and she perseveres. Even though the book is intended for younger readers, the author does not shy away from the sheer harshness that she faces. Learning to be a knight is not fun. At some point, she will have to take a graduation test that costs the principal like Duke Gareth one of his fingers. And the lessons she takes now leave her bruised and sleep-deprived. And of course, she makes enemies right away with a bullying kid named Rallone. In some ways, it's like a less brutal ENDER'S game. Her refusal to back down earns her the respect of Prince Jonathan, another boy learning knighthood. And he assigns his friend/subject, Gary, to sponsor her. Through her relative ease in accepting the lessons of discipline, and her even-handed respect for other people, she ends up making friends. It actually develops into a nice story about friendship, more Harry Potter than ENDER'S Game. She finally has a day off, and she and Gary have some fun in the city, where they meet the intrigued George Cooper, the young man Coram thought was a thief. Actually, he's the king of thieves, also known as the Rogue. Even though Gary is the son of the Duke, and should have invested interest in keeping George from doing what he likes, he, as well as Alanna, get into the idea of being friends with this charming rogue. George is pretty badass, doing a dominance display and showing zero fear in front of them, but he comes across as totally harmless to these potential friends. We later find out he has a collection of human ears from disobedient minions. He's a bit like Captain Jack Sparrow for kids. After Rallone continues antagonizing Alanna, she decides she has to defeat him the way he would respect, hand-to-hand combat. The formal lessons on martial arts don't help her. She's smaller and weaker than he is, so she goes to George for special lessons on street fighting. Armed with two very different fighting styles, she invents mixed martial arts and soundly beats him. That actually gives her a crisis of conscience. She defeated him only because she had access to training he didn't, so was it really fair? Was she just bullying him right back? She talks to her history professor, Sir Miles, and he helps her see that she's not a bully like Rallone. Prince Jonathan takes her aside and says pretty much the same thing, after which they become friends, and she drops the honorifics when speaking to him. The palace is beset by a magical sweating fever that saps the energy out of the healers who use their gifts on it. The only Tortallan sorcerer who might be powerful enough to defeat it is Duke Roger of Conte, but he's abroad, and he cannot get back soon enough to stop it before it kills over 10 people. When all the healers are weak, that's when Jonathan falls ill. One might even speculate that it was an assassination attempt. Fortunately, Alanna has the gift and made a promise to Maud that she'd use it to heal, so she persuades Sir Miles to let her give it her all to help save Jonathan. She does the pyromancy to create a connection to the gods, sees another vision of the Black City, and politely insists to the God of Death that he give up Jonathan's life. The God of Death studies her and agrees. During this trance, Jonathan and Alanna sound like adults. Sir Miles hears Alanna sound like a woman, but he doesn't know how to interpret it. He just notes that Alanna seems to have divine protection of some sort. Context makes it clear that the Great Mother Goddess has plans for her. Alanna doesn't know that when she makes demands of death, so you really have to admire the sheer moxie. Sir Miles develops a special interest in her after this, but whether or not he figures out her secret is left ambiguous for now.
I'm so confident, yeah, I'm unstoppable today.